Welcome everyone to our next session here in the Net Zero Nuclear Pavilion. Before we get started, I do just want to congratulate this community on this historic achievement of the Net Zero Nuclear Declaration on Saturday. And what we're going to discuss here today is the next steps. What are we going to do to actually implement the declaration? How can we really rethink and conceive how we build nuclear globally, particularly in embarking countries? And to this end, I have a really esteemed panel with me. We had a little switch out, which I think might make the panel even better. I have with me former U.S. Secretary of Energy Ernest Moniz and Sama Bilbao y Leon, World Nuclear, who's the Director General of the World Nuclear Association, and Rafael Castro, who's the CEO of Orlen Synthos Green Energy. Really international panel. And what we're going to do now is we're going to have some opening remarks from Ernie about a new report that the Clean Air Task Force, the EFI Foundation, and the Nuclear Threat Initiative launched yesterday about how we can scale nuclear in embarking countries, and then we're going to go into a discussion what the next steps are globally. But before we dive in, just a few housekeeping remarks. This session is on the record and video recorded, and the video will be archived online on YouTube and social media. If you'd like to join the conversation, please use the hashtag #NetZeroNuclear. And with this, Ernie, I'll hand it over to you.
This one is on, because Lee used it. Right, okay. Well, first of all, I want to repeat what Lee said about the report that I'll refer to in a few minutes being a collaborative effort of the Clean Air Task Force, the Energy Futures Initiative, and the Nuclear Threat Initiative. And I had to say, when you launch into cooperations with other organizations, you always do it with some trepidation. Well, we're the best of friends now, so it was really great. But I also want to associate myself with the congratulations on Net Zero Nuclear, and thank ENEC and the WNA for that. It's really extraordinary, the attention being focused on nuclear energy at this COP. Completely novel, and I do think that a major part of that is the fact that ENEC has walked the talk, has shown us all how to have a very successful program built essentially from nothing a couple of decades ago. And so it's really been a pleasure to be part of these activities, bringing nuclear into the foreground as an essential element of climate solutions, as an essential element of really developing a clean but also reliable and resilient grid, and of addressing energy security, and of course done the right way, and that's part of the discussion. So just to follow up on what Lee said, we saw on Saturday, we saw on Saturday the commitment by 22 countries to triple nuclear power. We're talking terawatt scale of addition. This is not necessarily for the faint of heart, but we think quite doable if we all pull together. If we are to achieve that, it's very clear we're going to need contributions kind of across the board. We're going to need it from countries that already have robust nuclear programs, countries that have smaller programs, countries that have had some pause in developing their programs, and embarking countries that currently don't have nuclear power and need to establish it. I personally think that the embarking countries will have to be a non-trivial contributor to that goal if we are to make it, and in that context, I think it's incumbent on all of us, including those of us from countries with more advanced programs, to all pull together to help this happen. If it doesn't happen, and if it doesn't happen well, we all suffer. So this is very important, and led to the three organizations coming together for COP to provide what we called the playbook for developing nuclear programs. And what we did there is we took 6 pillars, 6 areas, and I just make sure I get them all in order. So we had 6 pillars. In other words, areas where if you're going to have a successful program, you've got to be successful in every one of these in the end to have it work. Number 1, clearly project execution. Number 2, regulation. Number 3, project finance and bankability. All of those connected and linked tightly, frankly, in terms of getting something done. But also critical additional areas that must be addressed: non-proliferation and security, done properly, management of irradiated fuel, and workforce development. 3 areas that early thinking about is really important for success. So let me just say, I'm not going to go through all 6 of those. Our colleague Armin Cohen, the head of CATF, did that, but I'll just hit a couple of high points in each of these, or one high point perhaps in each of these. Oh, and I should say also that we felt very strongly that we do propose as possible initiatives in the future, for example, the establishment of some new international institutions. That is not a trivial job. We all know that. That's why we have to start tomorrow. But we also want to emphasize, we don't want to wait for success in those activities. We got to get going now on all of these areas while we are building institutions that will be important in the future, or can be important in the future, especially for embarking countries, but certainly not solely for those countries. So that's the context in which we address these issues. On project execution, I just say a couple things that, and Armin likes to emphasize: we need to move from a project focus to a product focus if we are going to have a scalable enterprise. Secondly, if we're going to get things moving, and I may come back to this later, we need to do things like thinking about significant order books for specific designs, frankly, as a way of doing risk sharing, and that immediately leads one to the wisdom of having regional aggregations as much as possible. If I turn to regulation, it's clear that building a strong regulatory system is critical. Again, ENEC kind of showed a way of doing that very, very well. We would just emphasize that maybe it's important in this future context that we start moving towards some kind of international technical support for building regulatory structures, and in addition, start thinking about things like globally acceptable design acceptance criteria. Now, obviously not citing issues, but fundamental design questions. We don't need to repeat the same thing over and over and over again in different countries, for example. Getting to project bankability, to finance, clearly there's a huge amount here about minimizing the cost of capital, et cetera, but I'll just re-emphasize what I said earlier. We need creative approaches to risk sharing, and risk sharing within the private sector, risk sharing between the private and public sectors, public-private risk sharing together, and all of this has to come together to help in the bankability, particularly in embarking countries. If we turn to non-proliferation and security, first of all, there are a lot of established practices, and part of the message here is you got to do them. There are advantages of, certainly in the initial phases at least, of once through fuel cycles, use of the international fuels market, not only meeting but maybe with the IAEA exceeding safeguards measures, all to build a confidence in the system that would be quite important. on spent fuel, irradiated fuel. Choose your words as you wish. Again, we just emphasize. Look, first of all, well, anybody with any semblance of technical knowledge understands there is no magic fuel cycle that eliminates high-level waste, and so we're going to need presumably ultimately a geological disposal option, but we can also have storage options in the meantime. What's important is to think it through upfront. These are not add-ons at the back end, security, spent fuel, etc. And finally, workforce. It's totally evident that an embarking country is very likely, especially in this today's world where there is not a lot of excess nuclear expertise to go around, that early workforce development is critical. Again, something the Emirates really paid attention to. And for example, we certainly would suggest that embarking countries, in addition to doing kind of workforce assessments, do things like having significant cadres involved in today's construction projects in other countries. It's the only way you're going to build the kind of capacity and expertise. So those are some of the kinds of things, not prescriptive. What we do is we say these are the 6 areas. These are 6 areas you need to address. Here are a set of options for addressing each of them. Choose the menu that suits your circumstances. And that's the spirit with which we try to do it. Not one size fits all. It's got to be tailored to the circumstances. For example, we had on our panel a deputy minister from Ghana. We had ENEC there. The Emirates may have been an embarking country 2 decades ago. Ghana may become an embarking country soon. They don't exactly have the same boundary conditions in terms of building the program. So with that, I'm going to, Lee, those are the introductory remarks. I turn it back to you.
Thank you.
Turn back your microphone as well.
I think, oh, it's working. Whoa, very loud, sorry. Thank you so much for this excellent overview. And I just want to say, for all of you who are really excited to read the full report after this excellent teaser, you can find it on the EFI Foundation, NTI, and Clean Air Task Force websites for a full download. So, Sama, I want to go to you. Oh, and it's beautiful, Ernie says. It really is. Sama, I want to go to you. Before this panel, we were talking a little bit about taking the Net Zero Nuclear Declaration from pledge to plan and taking stock at each COP, bringing this community together to really understand and review what we've done. So what would you say are the most important next steps between now and COP29?
Well, thank you, Lee. So let me just say, because I think there is several parts to this whole vision. So as you just heard, and many of you were there on Saturday, we have this excellent event where we heard all these 22 countries being bold and pragmatic and stating how nuclear was a key component of their energy mix and setting a high, ambitious goal moving forward. So that's governments, very important. We need governments to put in place the right policies. So we need to have policies that are technology agnostic, that include all carbon-free technologies in the appropriate markets. And this is the next step, right? So we need to have energy markets, and notice that I see energy markets, not electricity markets, because we really feel that as we move forward, there is going to be a lot of coupling between the different energy vectors, or whether it's electricity, whether it is heat, whether it is hydrogen, whether it is mobility, as we have these prosumers. So we really need to put in place energy markets that actually, first of all, value all the different attributes of different energies in the appropriate manner, and also that set the price accordingly. But also these energy markets, I mean, obviously we want to have competition, we want to dispatch the lowest price first. All those things are important, but the energy markets need to have signals that incentivize investment and incentivize long-term planning, which currently we don't have in many of our markets. So that's maybe what I would say from the side of the policy. So this is what some of the things that we wanted to incentivize with the declaration on Saturday. There is a third piece of that, which was the finance. If you had a chance to take a look at the declaration, the countries called upon the World Bank, upon multilateral financial institutions, development institutions, to definitely include nuclear energy in their financing plans. And also I want to make a point here. When we are talking about nuclear energy, I don't only mean a new nuclear power plant. I mean everything that is nuclear. It could be uranium mining. It could be any type of industrial facility in the front end or in the back end of the nuclear fuel cycle, and of course any industrial facility in the supply chain. So there is a million opportunities to finance nuclear that is not necessarily just a nuclear power plant. So that is the governments. And now today, this is the second part to this pledge comes today. So the governments had this declaration today at 6:30 p.m. We will have a formal presentation of the industry pledge. This is when we have over 120 companies from the global nuclear industry that are going to, this is a parallel declaration or a pledge to what the government said. Essentially said, okay, we, the nuclear industry, accept the challenge, and we are going to do what is needed to actually step up to this tripling nuclear capacity by 2050. And some of those things are what Ernest just said. So the industry is working very closely, obviously maintaining the independence, but trying to optimize as much as possible the licensing and the regulatory processes. This is something that we at World Nuclear Association have been working on for 15 years, but clearly things have accelerated in the last couple of years. So that is number one. Number two, supply chain. And of course, I'm sure Rafael will tell us a lot about some of these things. We really need to, the entire global nuclear industry needs to really rebuild itself. Clearly, in countries like China, perhaps Korea, Russia, they do have that supply chain that is up and running. But in Western countries, in North America and Europe, we really need to go up quite a bit if we really want to triple global nuclear capacity. And then, of course, together with this supply chain growth comes the humans that are going to power the entire industry. So this is this workforce development. So we need to really inspire and engage the next generation of talent to come into nuclear professions. Yes, clearly that is engineers, this is technicians, but there is many other professions in nuclear that also need engagement. And very importantly, we do need to make sure that we do a very good exchange of knowledge between the current generation of nuclear experts and the next generation of nuclear leaders. So that's the implementation, just nothing, right? It's easy, no problem.
Yeah, thank you so much. And everyone, today at 6:30, 120 countries are going to sign up. Companies, 24 countries signed the Net Zero Nuclear Declaration. 120 companies are going to follow up at 6:30 today. Rafael, I want to go to you. The playbook talks about collaborations between established and embarking nuclear countries. Poland has no nuclear right now, but high nuclear ambition, mostly due to energy security concerns. So twofold question, which collaborations is Poland pursuing right now? And then really important, on Saturday, we all learned we're going to Brussels for a follow-up summit. So what are you hoping to get out of the European Union now where nuclear is back on the agenda in Brussels as well?
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for inviting me to this panel. Yes, probably my company I represent, Oil and Synthos Green Energy, is the best example of both cases. First, we are industrial. We have industrial shareholders. We are owners. The group is owner of the 7 refineries across Poland and Central Europe, several chemical plants. We are largest producer of synthetic rubber, of polystyrene, products like this. And this what we need is nuclear energy to have a stable baseload sources of decarbonized energy. It's why we joined the project with SMRs together with GE Hitachi Energy. And so we are a perfect example of the industrial group which needs the decarbonization and stable supplies of energy. And we do follow what Mr. Secretary you described as 6 points. So I may surprise you that you describe these 6 points, but we execute these. So let me start with the first. As you said, the project management. We don't have exactly nuclear energy in Poland, and we have to build everything from the scratch. But we are lucky to have Polish engineers working in France, in UK, in Finland, Slovakia, and we just hire groups of experienced people from these different places, project management experience from Hinkley upon Sea, for Mochavce, from Finland, from other places. So let's say that we are on good track with project management. We employ already almost 100 people to do exactly these things. If you think about the regulations and regulatory frame, I agree. Most important thing, I would say that amazing thing is that collaboration between NRC, CNSC, Canadian regulator, and Polish regulator came in the form of joint assessment. I mean, it gives a possibility of the Polish regulator to do exactly what NRC, what CNC does to license BWRX 300 from GE Hitachi. Great support, great cooperation. If you think about the fuel and waste, one of the reasons we decided to support and cooperate and deploy BWRX 300 is because it has fuel which already have some track records of almost 2 decades. It's licensed in US, not only US, also in Europe, in Spain. There is a factory which belongs to GE Hitachi and producing also GNF2, so the fuel cycle is, let's say, proven. What was important factor for us. Very, very important thing that I appreciate you said, risk sharing. We are exactly, I think, the great example of something you design, because we are we have 50% of state-owned shareholder, which is the largest corporation in Poland and Central Europe, and 50% belong to the largest private industrial group. So risk sharing between public and private, it exactly exists in our case. And I would like to say that it was not easy. The worst point from the 6 points, I may say, is this cooperation with government and energy policy, and that's something what is worth to be improved. And I believe that events like this, like COP28, like the Net Zero pledge, like 22 countries, Polish president just mentioned our project and our cooperation with INEC 2 days ago. And I believe we can also be on the good path to improve this a little bit more.
So no demands for Brussels?
Sorry, there's a place called Brussels. You know, it's a tectonic shift. If you think about what's just happened in Brussels, I don't have other words. You know, for almost a decade right now, we had this daydreaming. I'm polite, and I think it's just this is what we observed is the end of the daydreaming about the energy. There are factors which are physical. You have steel and price of steel. You have price of concrete. You have baseload or you don't have baseload, and there are things which you have to compare. And I hope that Brussels start to think about the real factors which will influence European competitiveness and industry during next years and next decade. And there is no more ideology. You just have to look into the numbers.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this. And if we want to talk more Brussels, we're hosting a conversation in the Zero Carbon Future pavilion at 11:30 on exactly these hard questions and the EU tomorrow. I want to go to a lightning round because this is a very short panel, so that means 1 minute or less. But one of the key important factors, yeah, and Ernie, you're going to be on the spot to start, is we need order books to create demand. So what are the most important next steps to create those? Lightning round.
Okay, 1 minute per response. The actually, I just want to just congratulate our Polish colleague there in terms of what they're doing, and also what he pointed out, I think, was really important about it's not only that we've seen nuclear elevated in this COP, but I believe this COP, in that instance and in more instances, is taking a much more pragmatic approach to what it takes to go forward. Because it's exactly what you said. We got to stop the preening and the positioning and start getting some stuff done. Number two, there was discussion about the World Bank, multilateral development banks. I should say then that in our report, we did also put forward, again for the future, the possible development of a new bank revolving around nuclear. It's not the only solution, but what it puts its finger on, in my view, is that, to be blunt, the current multilateral banks simply do not now have the capacity to evaluate nuclear projects. So somehow or another we have to create that. One way is the way we suggest. And finally, just to elaborate on the private-public part, we have, and actually Jeff Brown and Steve Camello there are two of the principal responsible parties. We've put forward a proposal for the United States context, but it can be expanded, that the order book could be established with a set of customers. It could be regional customers, etc. But you've got to share the risk so that nobody is paying themselves like the first of a kind costs, etc. We propose that those customers in the order book have a special purpose business vehicle that doesn't have it on the balance sheet. We can go into that. We propose then that the government, in the United States case, through the DOE loan office, provide a backstop in terms of possible cost escalation. That's a public part. And then beyond that, a public-private shared cost should it be required. So those are just the kind of concepts. They got to be fit to purpose in any given situation. I should have said the order book, the government would not choose what technology they wanted, but those customers must choose one technology for the learning curve to be meaningful. But it's up to them to choose. You mentioned one particular reactor. Fine, choose that reactor. Order 10 of them somehow, etc., and move forward. Thank you. That was 1 minute per response.
Okay. Well, I'll be fast because actually Ernie did touch a lot of the points that I was going to make, so there is no real need to repeat them since he did a perfect good job. The one thing that I will say, and I think that here Rafael is the perfect example of what I'm going to say, is that the model that we are going to see for these order books that we are looking at is not the traditional. There's going to be a utility somewhere that is going to build 1, 2, or 27 nuclear power plants for traditional power uses. I think that we are going to start seeing very different end users that want this nuclear. It could be organizations like Rafael's. It could be major oil and gas producers that are in absolute dire need to have abundant energy to decarbonize their scope 1 and 2 operations. It could be the Microsofts, the Googles, the technology companies of the world that need lots and lots of electricity that is 24/7 and very reliable. And what is different with many of those players is, unlike some of the traditional utilities, those people will come to the table with, here it is, I have $20 billion, I want 10 reactors. So to me, the point here is the nuclear industry needs to invest in itself now. I think that we need to, I mean, we know the market is there. We cannot wait for the order book to arrive to say, okay, well, now I'm going to build a factory that is going to create these modules. No, because I don't know, Google or Microsoft or Shell are going to come tomorrow wanting 10 of those. So there is, the investment need to start now.
Thank you very much. Mr. Secretary, again, we exactly follow what you design. We establish SPVs, different SPVs with different project finance and different partners. So this pragmatic approach we definitely follow. And somehow it's essential and crucial for us to have this approach to deploy a fleet. Because as you said, you can give us 20 billion for 10 reactors, and I think it will be possible with the learning curve we can build, but if we just focus on one, at 20 billion maybe not so much, yes. So this is what we focus right now. It's how to build supply chain to deliver several units in Poland and other Central European countries when we would like to deploy the technology we chose. And I can tell you, it may surprise you, but this supply chain is very well developed, and in Poland, GE employs 5,000 people producing transformers, generators, cables. Hitachi has 4,000 employees producing transformers, cables, energy equipment. So it's a Polish supply chain. It's called GE and Hitachi. But in reality, yes, it's a Polish supply chain which can supply all turbine hull, and with Nuclear Island we believe that US Canadian supply chain could be the main source of the supply, and it requires international cooperation. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I will just chime in with my lightning round answer. I think the European Parliament is about to vote on an own initiative report on an SMR or strategy, and what we ask policymakers to do in Brussels is to actually help assemble an order book for the 13 plus countries in the European Union which are interested in new nuclear. With this, unfortunately, we're at time. I hope that the panelists will be around to mingle with all of you who have questions. I think there's a few things that I take away from this. Countries have delivered political endorsement of nuclear as clean tech for climate. We're the NGOs, so I think this is a question we should all take home. All of the above, but not one size fits all. And Ernie, as you said, we need to choose one technology and build 10 of them. So whittling down the number of technologies that are out there.
But we can choose, but they can be multiple.
But they can be multiple because we have to triple nuclear by 2050. Many order books. Thank you to the panelists. Thank you to the audience. Thanks for joining us. Please download the report if you're interested. And I think there's lots of programming here in the Net Zero Nuclear Pavilion going forward. Thanks all.